Alright, ladies and gentlemen, so day 7 talks about piecewise functions. Basically, normal functions we've been talking about, just broken into separate pieces. We have multiple pieces to behaving differently depending on what kind of input we have, whether what kind of x value we have. So for example, if you look at this function here on the board, if x is less than 2, our function is x squared. If x is exactly 2, it gives 6. And when x is more than 2, it gives a line 10 minus x. So what happens here is there's 3 separate pieces. And it looks like this. There's 3 separate outcomes all on our graph. Depending on what our x value is, it's going to depend on which graph we're actually using, which function we're actually using. Now, just like when we did some of our other stuff when we were graphing absolute value inequalities, we're graphing inequalities anyways. If it is a closed circle, that means we can include that point. If it's an open circle, we can't include it. So if we talk about where x equals 2, has to be at y equals 6, because that's where the closed point is for that spot. There's open circles there. We can't include those, only include the closed circles. This is how we'd write it. So we'd write f of x equals, and we write 3 different functions. We have x squared, 6, and 10 minus x. And then we have our restrictions here. If x is less than 2, we said we were going to use x squared. So we're writing x squared if x is less than 2. F of x equals 6 if x equals 2. F of x equals 10 minus x if x is greater than 2 and x is less than or equal to 6. So it's broken down into all of our pieces that we were talking about before. You write your function and you write what that restriction on your input is. So if you look at the second one here, it says when x is less than 0, so when it's on this side of our y-axis, it gives 5. So it doesn't say anything about equals, so we have an open circle, and it's where y equals 5. When x is 0 or more, so it's greater than or equal to 0, so we put a dot, it gives x squared, so we have our x squared function. Now you're not going to be asked to graph any of these, you just need to tell me how we would write it. So we're going to start just like we did before, f of x equals, and our nice little symbol there. Now, do your best with that symbol, I know it won't be perfect, right? But then we got to list 2 things, we have 2 parts to our graph. We have where it equals 5, and we have where it equals x squared. Some people put a comma after. I like to put a comma after. You don't have to. You can. So it is 5 when x is less than 0, we said. If it's at that y-axis or to the left, right? When x is less than 0, it gives y equals 5. The second part was when x is greater than or equal to 0, it gives x squared. So notice I'm listing both the restriction on x and the function it gives. So y equals 5 or y equals x squared, and I'm matching them up. I'm not putting them in opposite spots. That is all I need to write for my function. We need the restriction on x, so less than 0. We need what our function is then. It's y equals 5, or f of x equals 5. They mean the same thing. So that's it for that problem. Let's talk about evaluating them a little bit. If I have this piecewise here, it tells me 2x plus 5 if x is greater than or equal to 5. We're using negative 3x minus 1 if x is between negative 1 and 5. We're using 4x if x is less than or equal to negative 1. So if I want to evaluate this, first thing I need to do is I need to look and see, well, what is f of 4? So if x equals 4, that puts me in the category of between negative 1 and 5. So I'm using negative 1, x, 5. So I'm going to use then the function that goes with that piece. In this case, it's negative 3x minus 1. So because x is between negative 1 and 5, it's 4. I'm plugging that in for x. Negative 3 times 4 minus 1. Negative 3 times 4 is negative 12. Minus 1 gets me negative 13. So all you have to do is you got to figure out which function we're actually using, and then plug your number into it. The second one here, what is f of negative 4? So if x is negative 4, that means it's less than or equal to negative 1. So I'm going to use 4x. I'm using the function that goes with the piece it matches. So I'm going to plug negative 4 for x. 4 times negative 4 will be negative 16. Last one for this part. What is f of 5? Well, I notice Oops, here, let me erase these. This says greater than or equal to 5. This just says less than 5. So I'm using the one that says or equal to 5 because x is 5 in this case. Well, I'm going to use a function that matches it then. 2 times 5 plus 5. That gets me 10 plus 5, which is 15. So we're looking to see where does our x value fit in our restrictions over here. And then we're going to use the matching function for it. Okay, on the bottom here, we have two problems. F of x equals 3x plus 2 if x is less than or equal to negative 4. And it equals negative 4 if x is greater than negative 4. So I'm looking at my first problem here, f of negative 4. So that's where x equals negative 4. So I got to look, I got to figure out, is it less than or equal to negative 4 or is it greater than 4? In this case it's less than or equal because it's or equal to negative 4, so I'm going to use the top function. Plug it in. 3 times negative 4 plus 2. Well, 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. Plus 2 gives me 10 for my answer. Then our last one that you have on your paper, find f of 0. So that's where x equals 0. 0 is greater than negative 4. Right, so x equals 0. 0 is greater than negative 4, so I'm using this bottom function. But I don't have anywhere to plug in x. That's perfectly okay. What's going to happen is anything that's greater than negative 4 is going to equal negative 4. That's all that means. So negative 4 is my answer. So if you have nowhere to plug in x, there's no x values, you're just taking that number, and that's going to be your answer. Hopefully you don't have any questions. If you do, please feel free to email me, Schoology, message me. I'll be back tomorrow. We have a review day tomorrow. We have a test on Thursday, so please make sure you're prepared. Swipe up, subscribe.